What if I told you that the world you live in, the game you're playing, was manipulated long before you even entered it? That the rules you were taught to follow aren't just limiting, but were designed to keep you exactly where you are? Now think about this. Who really wins in life? Is it the smartest, the strongest, the hardest worker? Number. The real winner is the one who understands that the rules aren't fixed. They're malleable, flexible, changeable. As Sun Tzu said in The Art of War, the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. The real question is, what if the key to winning isn't just playing better, but completely changing the game in your favor? That's the idea that blew my mind when I came across the concept of predatory thinking by Dave Trott, a concept that separates the strategic from the mediocre, the innovators from the conformists. Imagine you're trapped in a locked room. Most people would try to break down the door, kick the wall, or wait for rescue. But the predatory thinker? He realizes the key is already in the jailer's pocket, and all he has to do is convince him to open the door. This video isn't about cheap motivation. I'm not here to tell you to work harder or believe in yourself. I'm here to show you how to change the rules of the game. And in the end, you'll have two choices. Keep playing by the rules you were given, or start writing your own. If you believe the world is a fair place, I hate to break it to you, but that illusion only serves to keep you trapped on the board while others move the pieces. Since the dawn of humanity, there have always been those who follow the rules and those who write them. And history proves that true winners never accepted imposed conditions. They changed the game entirely. But what does that mean in practice? It means that while many people try to compete within the established rules, strategists are busy rewriting those rules in their favor. The belief that simply following the traditional path will lead to success is one of the greatest traps ever created. We grow up hearing that we need to study, get a good job, work hard, and be patient. But if that were all it took, why do so many intelligent, hardworking, and well-intentioned people remain frustrated and stuck in mediocre lives? Because they never realized that real competition doesn't happen at the level of effort, it happens at the level of strategy. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche captured this reality brilliantly when he spoke about the transvaluation of values. To him, the dominant values of a society are not absolute. They are creations of those in power. The concept of the Übermensch, the overman, represents the individual who refuses to accept imposed moral and social rules, instead creating their own values. Most people live within what Nietzsche called the slave morality, blindly following established standards of conduct without questioning whether these rules actually serve their lives. The problem is that this morality was created by those already in power and was designed to keep others submissive. Nietzsche suggests that instead of passively accepting these rules, we should be the architects of our own reality, establishing new values based on our will to power. But maybe you're thinking, okay, but I'm not a philosopher. How does this apply to me? The answer lies in how you approach any challenge. Most people, when faced with a problem, try to solve it by working harder. They put in more hours, study more, and keep doing the same thing, expecting a different result. But the secret isn't in doing more. It's in doing things differently. The biggest mistake most people make is believing that the game of life is based on fairness and meritocracy, when in reality, it's based on leverage and perception. Look around you. The most successful people, the ones who truly control the pieces on the board, didn't get there just by being more talented or working harder. They got there because they understood something fundamental. The game has no fixed rules. What works today may not work tomorrow. And more importantly, they mastered the art of crafting narratives that made their actions seem legitimate and unquestionable. Dave Trott, in Predatory Thinking, says something brilliant. A problem doesn't exist in a vacuum. It exists in an environment. Change the environment, and the problem disappears. Think about that for a moment. We often waste energy trying to fight obstacles when, in reality, the smartest move would be to change the context in which those obstacles exist. It's like trying to win a chess match while someone keeps changing the rules. The real question is, do you want to keep playing by the rules imposed on you, or do you want to learn how to change them? Now, the question that truly matters, how do you play a game with no fixed rules? The first step is accepting that change doesn't come through the traditional path. Great players don't accept the conditions they're given. They redefine them. And if you want to change your reality, that's exactly what you need to start doing. Most people go through life trying to play better within the rules they were given, but true strategists don't just play the game, they rewrite it. And this is not just a metaphor. History is full of examples of people who change the rules of the game instead of trying to win under the established ones. But this kind of change requires sharp perception. You can't change what you don't see. What separates visionaries from conformists is precisely the ability to see beyond what is apparent. One of the greatest philosophical examples of this idea is Socrates, who lived in a society where the rules of thought were well defined. The sophists dominated public discourse, selling truth as a malleable product shaped by political and personal interests. The game was simple. Whoever could manipulate words more skillfully and please the most people became influential and respected. But Socrates refused to accept these rules. Instead of debating and trying to win within the same framework as the sophists, he completely changed the approach. He created the Socratic method, a technique that led people to question their own certainties until they realized they actually knew nothing. He didn't offer ready-made answers, nor did he try to be more persuasive. He dismantled others' illusion of knowledge. The result? He not only changed the way people thought, but also laid the foundations for all of Western philosophy. Socrates showed that sometimes the only way to win the game is to change the arena where it is played. Now take a look at your own life. How many times have you tried to win a game only to realize it was designed for you to lose? The education system, the job market, even the way we are taught to handle money and relationships, all of these follow an invisible set of rules that were created by someone at some point with a specific purpose. But here's the key: none of it is fixed. What seems unchangeable today was once someone's invention, and what was invented can always be reinvented. Trott, in Predatory Thinking, reminds us that problems do not exist in a vacuum. They exist within a context that can be altered. Imagine you're trapped in a maze. Most people would try to find their way out by walking through it, following the available paths, exploring possibilities, but the strategic thinker realizes they don't have to play this game. They can climb the walls, observe the maze's layout from above, and simply take the shortest route across. This doesn't mean they're cheating. It means they've understood that the rules were just an illusion. An example of this rule changing can be seen in the business world. Think about taxi drivers before Uber. The taxi market was heavily regulated, requiring expensive licenses to operate. Anyone wanting to enter the game had to buy a license, spend years building a customer base, and compete with other drivers. But Uber did something different. It completely ignored this structure and created a parallel system where anyone could offer transportation without needing a traditional license. Instead of trying to improve the taxi service, they created an alternative that made the old system irrelevant. This is the kind of shift that redefines a game. The big problem for most people is that they spend their lives trying to become better within a system designed to keep them limited. They try to be more productive employees, more cautious investors, more predictable partners. But all of that still happens within the same game. The real breakthrough happens when you realize you can play differently. If everyone is running in the same direction, ask yourself, why am I running too? Who decided this was the right path? Most people never ask these questions because they've been trained to go with the flow, not to challenge it. The truth is, the power to rewrite the rules is always available. The only real barrier is mindset. The world is full of opportunities that can only be seen by those who have the courage to question accepted norms. Those who don't dare to challenge the status quo end up as mere pieces in a game they don't even understand. And when you realize this, when you truly understand that nothing has to be the way it is, you experience a terrifying kind of freedom. You can change the game entirely in your favor. Most people believe that creativity is a gift reserved for artists, writers, or brilliant inventors. But that's a mistake. Creativity in its purest sense is simply the ability to find solutions where no one else sees them. And more than that, it's the most powerful tool to turn the game in your favor. Those who master creativity don't need brute force, influence, or money, just the ability to see what others don't. Dave Trott says in Predatory Thinking, ideas don't come from a vacuum, they emerge from the mess of execution. The world doesn't belong to those who have great ideas, but to those who act on them. However, acting creatively doesn't mean being impulsive or betting everything on a grand, overcomplicated plan. It means understanding that the game is fluid and can be changed at any moment, as long as you have the courage to think differently. Stoicism, one of the most practical philosophies of all time, teaches something fundamental about creativity. The problem is never the problem. The problem is how you respond to it. Epictetus, one of the greatest Stoic thinkers, was a slave. He was born into circumstances that most people would see as a sealed fate. But instead of accepting that reality, he turned it into a training ground. His mind was his only possession, and he decided to use it to earn his freedom. He didn't try to physically fight against his fate because he knew he would be crushed. Instead, he used philosophical creativity to change the perception of what it meant to be free. He proved that even when physically chained, his mind remained untouchable. This idea shaped the entire Stoic philosophy and centuries later inspired great leaders like Marcus Aurelius. Now, bring this into your own reality. How many times have you felt trapped by a problem and tried to solve it with more effort instead of changing your approach? Most people see challenges as a wall. They either try to break through it with brute force or give up entirely. But creative thinkers don't try to push through the wall. They find a hidden door, climb over it, or even dig a hole at the base. The secret to winning isn't trying harder, it's seeing more. Trott tells a fascinating story about a young creative who wanted to impress the CEO of a major advertising agency. Instead of following the traditional route, sending a resume or trying to schedule a meeting, he scattered small, colorful pieces of paper on the CEO's office floor, each with an intriguing message. When the executive arrived, he had no choice but to stop, notice the papers, and follow them to a final message. He didn't have to say a word, didn't have to beg for attention. He made the game play on his own terms. And he was hired on the spot. That's brutal creativity. Many people think that thinking outside the box means coming up with a brilliant and unexpected idea. But in reality, it's much simpler than that. Creativity, in the context of strategy, means looking at existing rules and finding flaws in them. It means realizing that in many cases, the limitations that hold us back are just imaginary barriers created by society, by companies, and even by ourselves. Another powerful idea Trott advocates is that simplicity is the purest form of sophistication. Too often we overcomplicate problems, getting lost in the search for elaborate solutions when the answer is already right in front of us. This reminds me of one of the most iconic principles of design and communication. Less is more. In a world where everyone is trying to impress with complexity, those who master the art of clarity are the ones who truly stand out. And here's the crucial point. Creativity is not a rare talent. Creativity is a muscle. If you want to rewrite the rules in your favor, you have to train it every day. The secret is simple. Stop looking at problems the way everyone else does. Brutal creativity is the ability to question, to flip logic on its head, and to refuse to accept that things have to be the way they are. And the most incredible part? The world is shaped by those who dare to see beyond the obvious. Most people follow a predictable pattern of thinking. They do what they've always done, believe what they've always heard, and make decisions based on what society considers normal. But here's the problem. The herd never leads. It only follows. And those who follow without questioning become prey in the game of those who truly think. If you want to change the game in your favor, you need to abandon the mindset of prey and adopt the mentality of a predator. But what does that mean? Being a predator has nothing to do with brutality or lack of ethics. It's about autonomy, vision, and the courage to act beyond established norms. A predator doesn't wait for someone to tell them what to do, doesn't accept ready-made truths, and doesn't conform to imposed conditions. They observe, analyze, and find the most efficient way to get what they want, often without others even realizing that the game was won before it even began. This idea can be illustrated by a simple yet powerful concept: strategic ignorance. Dave Trott talks about how children have a huge advantage over adults because they haven't been trained to accept the impossible. An adult looks at a problem and thinks of 1,000 reasons why it can't be done. A child, on the other hand, simply asks, "Why not?" This kind of thinking may seem naive, but in reality, it's one of the secrets of the greatest strategists. What prevents many people from growing isn't a lack of knowledge, but an excess of it. They know so much about difficulties, limitations, and what could go wrong that they become paralyzed. A predator, on the other hand, often moves forward because they aren't contaminated by the fear of the impossible. They see what others ignore and use it to their advantage. Nietzsche had a very similar vision when he spoke of the Übermensch. To him, human beings should free themselves from the mental chains imposed by society and create their own rules for life. The predator, in this sense, is the one who refuses to accept the definitions the world tries to impose on them. They decide who they want to be, what game they want to play, and how they want to win. But how do you apply this in practice? The first step is to stop acting like the majority. The masses follow patterns because it's more comfortable, safer, and socially acceptable. But ironically, that's the recipe for a predictable and limited life. If everyone is running in one direction, ask yourself, is there a path no one is looking at? If everyone in your industry does things a certain way, is there a better way? If the answer has always been, because that's how it's always been done, then you found a breaking point. Trott tells a fascinating story about an experiment where new police officers were trained in observation. An instructor placed a group of recruits in a room and had a stranger walk in and out. Then, he asked how many had noticed the details of the person's appearance. The result? Almost no one remembered any significant details. The moral of the story is clear. People don't pay attention to what they don't expect to see. This means that many times you could be facing a great opportunity but simply don't notice it because you've been trained to look only where everyone else is looking. The predator mindset isn't just about thinking differently. It's about seeing the game in a way most people would never consider. While prey sees barriers, the predator sees opportunities. While prey reacts to problems, the predator anticipates them and positions itself so that victory becomes inevitable. And here's the most important detail. The predator never asks for permission to win. It simply does. While most people wait for a green light, a push, or external validation, the predator is already in motion. And that is exactly what separates the game changers from those who merely participate. In the end, you only have two choices: change the game or be played by it. Most people don't realize that by failing to take control of their own narrative, they end up living by rules imposed by others. And the worst part? They think they're in control. They work hard, push themselves, follow conventional paths, but never stop to question whether the game they're playing will actually take them where they want to go. The first step to changing the game is understanding that you don't need permission to do things differently. If history has taught us anything, it's that those who waited for the world's approval never accomplished anything great. Look at any innovator, any disruptive thinker, anyone who truly left their mark. They didn't follow the herd. They didn't accept the existing rules. They created new ones. That means change begins with a simple decision, refusing to accept imposed limitations and learning to see alternatives that are invisible to most people. This brings us to a powerful concept, the art of leverage. In a game where resources, opportunities, and power seem unfairly distributed, leverage becomes the ultimate tool. You don't need money to start an empire, nor connections to open doors. What you need is to find those small points of advantage that allow you to amplify your results with minimal effort. Trott calls this finding the pressure point. In other words, identifying the smallest action that creates the biggest impact. Imagine you want to grow professionally. The traditional approach would tell you to study more, work harder, try to please more people. But a strategic thinker doesn't think in terms of more, they think in terms of better. What is the specific knowledge that no one else has? The one thing that could make you indispensable? What is the single connection that could open 10 new doors at once? What is the overlooked detail that, when exploited correctly, completely changes the game? The secret isn't doing more. It's doing what truly matters. Another essential principle for applying predatory thinking is learning to play with the world's invisible rules. Most people act logically, directly, and predictably, but life doesn't work that way. Trott tells the story of pilot John Cunningham, who during World War II developed a technology that allowed planes to attack at night. But instead of revealing this innovation, the military spread the lie that their pilots had night vision from eating lots of carrots. The lie was repeated so many times that it became truth and turned into one of the most enduring myths of the war. This story proves a simple point. People don't believe what is true, they believe what makes sense to them. If you understand this, you can rewrite any narrative in your favor. But perhaps the most important part of this transformation is an uncomfortable lesson. No one is coming to save you. If you're waiting for the perfect moment, for more confidence, or for the right opportunity, you've already lost. The game doesn't favor those who wait. It favors those who create. And creating means making mistakes, being criticized, falling, and getting back up. But here's the catch. While most people see failure as an obstacle, real players see it as an essential element in the evolution process. Rejection isn't a sign that you've failed, it's a map showing you where not to go. So the final question is, do you want to be the player or the piece? The world is full of people who spent their entire lives following the rules, only to realize too late that they were playing a game they could never win. But the good news is that none of this is set in stone. As Trott says, the rules aren't written in stone, they're written in sand, and sand can be reshaped. Now the choice is yours. Will you keep trying to play better within the rules you were given, or will you start changing them entirely in your favor? I want to sincerely thank you for making it to the end of this video. I know that many times life puts us in situations where it feels like we're just playing by someone else's rules. Believe me, I've been there. There was a time when I thought success was purely about effort and dedication, but then I realized something crucial. The real game isn't about following the rules, it's about questioning them. That mindset shift was a turning point for me, and now I'm happy to share this path with you. And if you're still here, it's because deep down, you know the game can be played differently. Sometimes all it takes is a small shift in perspective to change everything. Trust me, changing the way you see things can be the first step toward changing your reality. And if you're ready for more, don't forget to like, comment, and of course, subscribe to the channel. Now, no pressure, but if you don't click the notification bell, well, changing the game might get just a little harder. Speaking of change, I have something truly intriguing coming up in the next videos. One of them is going to challenge your mind in ways you can't even imagine. And the other will make you rethink everything you thought you knew. What's coming next? I'll let you find out for yourself. Click on them and let's keep rewriting the rules of the game together.